Good morning.
Good morning.
Sister Alma Marie Messing, and you've kept that name.
I did.
Yeah.
And the reason is my baptismal name was Caroline. But when I changed, I took my mother's name, which was Alma. And she was so thrilled. I could never go back to my other name. I don't want to give it up.
That's lovely. Well, you know, I looked up the meaning of the word Alma because I thought that was interesting. Your mom had it and then you took it. And it means kind and nourishing, fostering.
Yes.
And what little I know of you, that certainly is indicative of your personality. So
I don't know. I do care for pets.
That's right, that's right. Well, let's start at the beginning where you started. We'd like to know a little bit about where you grew up, your parents, your family, where you went to school.
Right. I was born on May 25th, 1926, in Grosse Point Park, Michigan. I was in the St. Clair of Montefelco Parish. It had just opened the year before. My parents lived at the same address all their life until they moved into apartments, but for over 40 years.
Wow.
But they moved into that. It was a brand new parish, St. Clair of Montefelco, and it was the Augustinians.
Right.
And the services were held in the Colony Theater at first, but I did not know that. You know, when I was ready for school, I went to kindergarten school at Defer. It was a public school, and I loved the block we lived on. We knew.
What was that block? I'm familiar with Grosse Point.
1426. Okay. It was between Mack and Charlevoix.
Got it.
And we characterized all the people in the neighborhood. The people across the street had two daughters and the son. The younger daughter was like a year older than I was, and the boy was the same age as my brother. Eventually, I had two brothers. Frank was born 3 years after I was, and Don was born 13 years after I was born. So when I entered the convent, it was very hard to leave him. He was only 5.
Oh, my. And so there were the 3 of you?
Yes.
2 brothers, okay.
And when they would come to visit, when they left, I cried. One of the sisters would say, she'll never make it.
What made it so hard for you to leave? Beside the brothers?
Well, to say goodbye to them, because, I was very attached to my family.
What made your family so unique that you felt so close to them?
I don't know. We just always did things together. You know, we went to my grandparents, both sets of grandparents were living. And I even had great-grandparents. I didn't know them real well. But my grandmother on my father's side always sat in a chair in the sunroom in their home. And that's how I remember him, Grandpa Herbert's. And
was your brother upset when you left? When you entered the convent?
I don't think so.
You were.
I don't think so. You know, we used to, I don't think he argued so much as I kind of dominated
The oldest, the big
I
sister.
wanted, at least I wanted things he could never enter my room because he would mess it up. But no, we really got along very well.
So you loved him dearly. How was it to the transition to Adrian when you entered?
Well, I was lonesome almost all the time. And if it hadn't been for recreation and singing, I would have been lost. That saved me, because then I just thoroughly enjoyed that all the time.
Was there one special person perhaps that helped you, or a couple of the sisters that helped you in this transition?
Oh, when I was at Dominican High, yes.
You went to Dominican High.
Yes, I did. And as I say, we were the charter class. I was always so proud of that. And Sister Marie Carroll.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and I loved it because I loved drama. I loved.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yes, and I loved, anything connected with it. When I was in high school, I joined the Catholic Theater of Detroit. I was the youngest member. And, I don't know if I thought I was going to be a movie star. I'd have many limitations, I think. But anyway, I think that's what at first attracted me. And she had the verse choir, she had the drama, and that kind of thing.
She attracted you to theater?
Well, I was attracted to her.
To her.
Because of her drama.
Right.
Yes. And then when we were in high, she moved from Dominican High to Elgin. And another girl from Dominican High and I rode the train to Elgin to visit her.
Oh, how nice.
We were young things, so traveling on the train was just by ourselves was fun.
Was Sister Marie Carroll, who was instrumental in your changing over to think about becoming a sister?
I think, I thought about it when I was at St. Clair of Montefalco, but
in grade school?
In grade school. And I enjoyed those sisters very much. They were the Columbus Dominicans.
Right.
And, but then I went to Dominican High, and life was much more spirited. And I think and then I was interviewed by Mother Gerald, and I had said something about, I will be there in June. And I don't know what made me say that.
You were interviewed by her because you were going to enter, or just...
No, I don't know why. Maybe because they thought I would enter. I really don't know what was behind it, but anyway.
You were real close to your family, as you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
That decision to move to Adrian or to enter the convent, that had to be very difficult, because you'd be leaving your family, so to speak.
I know. That didn't enter my mind until it happened.
Right.
Then it hit me. But before that, I didn't think about that.
That's interesting. I think a lot of women, I think that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
You don't, you think life will go on.
Right. I don't know what we don't think or think.
You're not, So.
So then you got to Adrian.
Then I got to Adrian.
And you cried a lot.
I cried a lot. And I made it.
Good. Yeah, I guess you did. And so then your ministries?
Most of them were teaching.
Okay.
When I was at the University of Chicago, I did everything but the dissertation. And so I went to Siena but I got nothing done on the dissertation. So the
What was your
following,
dissertation on? What were you studying?
I was in curriculum.
Okay.
Although my science, before I was in science, and I had gone to the Institutum di Vitome with Sister Albertus, Rita Schaefer.
Oh, yes,
And,
yes.
So we spent 3 years there, from 9 to 5, 11 months of the year. And we were steeped in science, which I needed because I was not interested in science in high school. I was interested in math. Sister Bertha thought
Those two kind of go together, don't they? Math and science?
Yes,
you
they
hear-
do.
yeah.
But I was interested in the math,
Got it.
but not the science. And I majored in Latin, or you didn't major, but I took 4 years of Latin, which was helpful.
Helpful for what?
For science.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
because,
right, with the
yeah, there's a lot
language.
of Latin.
Yeah.
And but anyway, then after profession, I stayed in Adrian and studied, and I was sent out for 40 days and 40 nights to St. Joseph, Michigan. One of the sisters there had a blood clot in her leg and was brought into Adrian. And then I left St. Joseph when she returned, and I taught science. I studied more than the kiddos did. And then I had to come back and catch up on all my schoolwork, and which I did. And
I noticed that you were also in Nassau.
oh, yes, I was. I loved it there.
What did you teach there?
Well, I was the headmistress, and I also taught science.
Okay. So science has been your
Pardon?
science has been your forte
Yes,
in your ministry.
yes. In every place I've been, at Barry, at Rosarian, St. Anne's, in West Palm Beach, Regina.
You've been in a lot of the community institutions,
Yes, I
haven't you?
have. Yes.
That's nice. That's
And
nice.
but then when I came back to the University of Chicago to do my dissertation, I did not want the community to have to pay for me. So that was in the 70s when everything was changing. And I sent my resume to the Museum of Science and Industry, and it was in August. I was visiting my family, my mother and father, and they called me from the museum and accepted me sight unseen. Now that would not, that was just the period. It was safe to do that, and they'll probably never do it again.
Don't downplay it. That's wonderful. That's
But
wonderful.
anyway, they said, "Can you be here by September?" And I could not wear the habit. So my mother and father had already moved from our home into Eastland Village,
Okay.
which was right across
Right,
from
right.
the Eastland
Mall.
Mall. So my mother and I went over and I bought 2 dresses. And so I wore the dresses to the museum, and I wore my habit at home, and eventually that got very crazy. So and I naturally turned over. But when I went to the museum, we had a uniform for as long as I was like a guide lecturer. But then I moved into the offices where I used to make out schedules for the other guide lecturers. Then eventually I landed in the education department.
Wow.
And that's when I got connected with the NASA Resource Center. And I was in touch with NASA because they were in touch with us.
Oh, my
and
word.
we planned workshops for teachers. We planned our own workshops for teachers. And then eventually I began Elder Hostel.
Right, that's...
Yeah, and I did that for 10 years.
And you went to many interesting places. Explain what Elder Hostel is.
Elder Hostel was the name of the institution that created visiting various places as a senior. You have to be 55 or older. Well, we were a marvelous site, you know, and I loved planning the day and the night. My days were probably from 5 to 10 every day.
5 a.m.
5 a.m. I would get up so I could get to the museum because we'd put out snacks and for the Elder Hostel, and I wanted to get all that done. But anyway, it was wonderful, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. And then when I retired, there had already been a march. I retired in January, and in March there was also an Elder Hostel scheduled. So they hired me on contract.
Wow.
Because there was nobody else to handle Elder Hostel. So in March was the last one. But I did that for 10 years at the museum. It was thoroughly enjoyable. The people were marvelous to meet, had stories of their own.
What was an incident or a time that was just very special, or you just remember it was very touching, impressionistic on you?
At Berry College, this is one incident that has never left my mind. I was there when Sister Kenneth DeWillius was there, and it was the time Fidel Castro was sending all the professionals out, the doctors, the lawyers, or any obstructing people.
Right.
And I did not know a word of Spanish, but I would go and help Sister Kenneth. We'd go to the Spanish Center. The bishop had already established one. He must have foreseen this happening. But on Easter Sunday, we used to make periodic trips to the airport. We did this Easter Sunday evening. There was a young couple with a baby. They had just been brought over on the plane. Sister Kenneth and I went there, saw them, put them in the car, took them to Berry, gathered things for the baby, and Sister Kenneth would take these two people because most of them had to be relocated, and she would take them. I played with Rudolfo on the grass, as did many of the sisters, but I got so attached to that child. But several years later, I got a letter. So did Sister Kenneth. It was a duplicate letter. And telling us of all the things that happened. He was grown and married, and I had another brother, and very successful families. The father that we had picked up as a young man did a lot of hospital administration, but they were back in Florida. And I gave my original copy to Archives, and they put a copy in Sister Kenneth's
Oh, nice.
file as well, because she's such a big part of that. And so that's one thing I remember there. Another
Very difficult times for the Cubans, and how
I would go to the supply place. They had a place where they would send clothing and what have you. And the only word I knew was ropa, which is dress. But they would get dresses for their children. But they were stripped of their wedding bands. They were sent with a box of cigars to bring here. But they're stripped of all their jewelry or anything else.
And their professions and everything.
It disturbed me very much. So
that was a blessing in a disguise, or a disguise with a blessing, when you and Sister Kenneth.
It was.
Right.
I will never forget it.
Yeah.
And I have a copy of the letter, and so I share it with people. You know, so that's one incident.
So now you mentioned retirement a little while back.
Yes.
I can't imagine you retiring, but you've been here in Adrian for
less than a year.
Less than a year, right?
Right. It'll be a year in April, and but when I retired, I did after school things, enrichment. I would do cooking or crafts.
Who did you do these teachings for?
I would go to Sister Pat McKee, got me lots of places, St. Cletus, St. Michael's, and I thoroughly enjoyed them.
So you go to different parishes and offer these classes for seniors?
And no, these were for children.
Oh, for children?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we would do fun things like ants on a log or dump cake, which are very easy to do.
Yes, I know dump cake.
And cookies that you would make with Jell-O, not a lot of mixing. So it was fun stuff. And then in the summertime in our neighborhood, we would do, I did sidewalk learning. I had a thing like the politicians have on our sidewalk. And I said, sidewalk learning. And I had a little portable picnic table, and I would set it up. And a lot of the children in our neighborhood would come from the South, Mississippi and so on, with thousands of, I exaggerate, of children in the neighborhood. And they would come, and maybe I would do it maybe for about 2-3 hours, whatever was neat. And I would teach something. We'd have this one day a week, and I might teach card games. Then they'd each get a deck of cards. It would help them to entertain themselves. And then one of our parishioners offered to do pictures. You know how you make your own buttons with the pictures. She came and did a session, and all sorts of things like that. And then at St. Elby, this is even before I retired, part-time. At St. Elby's I taught science, but I didn't have a homeroom or anything. But when I did retire, I did after-school care with preschoolers. Oh, that was a precious time. And
you just are very creative and very engaged in the lives of others. Did the children ever respond back to you as far as how much they appreciated what you did once a week? I mean, do you recall?
Well, when I no longer could open or carry that picnic table, I didn't do it anymore. And the doorbell would ring and the kiddos would come up and say, "Are you going to have classes today?"
Isn't that precious?
So that to me was an indication they enjoyed it. And the fact that they showed up each time, it might have been different ones, the same ones. And it was always fun stuff but also things that were engaging that might help them.
And you had the gift, it seems, to reach all age levels as far as engaging others.
Well, the first time
Where'd you get that from?
I don't know.
It was down there, and you certainly have used that gift.
Yeah. But I never taught grade school till I taught science at St. Albans. But I enjoyed it because I loved science. After all that I thought I didn't, but I did. And I'm trying to think of some of the other things. When I was at the museum and I got introduced to NASA, when I retired, that relationship to NASA never ended, because while I was at the museum, we would go to conventions at the Johnson Space Center, and we would another teacher and I, who had been at the museum, would go, and for 17 years we did this at NASA, even after I retired, and we gave workshops to teachers, and it would depend upon the grade level. But most of mine were probably for grade school, and but we went for 17 years, and the reason we stopped is that we got blizzard in Chicago. We could not get to the airport. Nobody could get to us. It was one of the serious blizzard times. And
back in those days, we've had some competition now. Yeah, with the weather. Yeah, I said we've had competition with horrible weather.
Oh, I know. Yes. So then we didn't go anymore. But I used to love those things, and I met astronauts. And I was in Sally Ride, and I made a quilt.
Were you involved with NASA with the shuttle crash?
Yes. Yes, I was, with Krista McAuliffe.
McAuliffe, right.
Yes. And Barbara Morgan was her runner-up in the Teacher in Space. And when Krista McAuliffe was killed in the crash, they canceled that program. But they gave the opportunity to Barbara Morgan to be an astronaut if she wished. And she did. But she is also a teacher, and she has gone back to her teaching. I don't know if she's still teaching or not.
But you never went to space. You never went to space.
I never went to space. There was a time when I would have loved to go, but I couldn't now. So, but Barbara Morgan is the one who gave me an award from the director of the NASA Resource Center. So when I was still at the museum, I got this award, and it's a flag that had flown in space and a picture and
You've got that in your room.
Yeah, yes, I have that in my room. And
so you were good in science, and you were at the NASA Center. And what about a movie star? How do you think you fulfilled that role?
The movies.
You said you thought you wanted to be a movie star.
I love oldies but goodies. I'm down here, and I even give them some ideas. So I fulfill that by going to those movies.
I think maybe you fulfilled it too when you had that little school once a week out on your front lawn with those kids. Yeah, that would have been a great story nowadays.
Right.
On TV, in the movies. Right.
But anyway, I hope those kiddos are grown by now, I'm sure.
And I'm sure you touched their lives beyond even what you can imagine.
Well, I hope so, but
yes. Not
I
that
hope they're happy.
because you were that kind of let up. Now you've been here, as you said, just less than a year. What was in the transition? How did you decide to come here?
Well, I have been wanting to come for a while.
Okay.
As life got more difficult, walking and so on, but Sister Catherine Hartnett didn't want to come. So ultimately, I became like a caregiver, but not extensively. But it got to the point where she could not be left alone. So when I wanted to go home one Christmas, I said to Kathy Klingen, I said, I would like to go home at Christmas time. She said, don't do what you have to do.
Yeah.
I said, but I can't.
Because
So anyway, we had a meeting after one of Sister Catherine's operations. She was in a nursing home in Chicago, and we had a meeting with her two cousins, and that's when she thought she'd go to Adrian while I was at my brother's, who lives in Bloomfield Hills.
okay.
So it's, she said I could pick her up on the way home. And Kathy Klingen said, why not stay there? So that's how it all happened. Her two nieces wanted her settled
right.
because they wanted to move to Portland, Oregon, where their brother is.
So then you thought the best thing for you to do at this
So
time
then
of your life
that gave
is
me-
to practice what you preach.
Yes. So anyway, Sister Catherine went in early December of 2017. She lost both her brother and her sister in 2017, which I think was, difficult for her. But everybody came in and got her ready, and she went in early December. When I came back from my family's, I had packing. That's one of the worst things in my life.
Well, you still carry on with creativity, creative things.
Oh,
so you have.
I have.
Yeah, and then animals. You said animals were important in your life. Animals.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, we took our dog. When I left Chicago, I went to my brother's. The next day, we went to Pennsylvania to deliver Honey, who is a Cairn Terrier, and my niece loves her to death. So does the whole family. And I will be seeing her at Easter again, because I'm going at Easter time.
Good. So you still are able to connect with your family because they live locally.
Oh, every holiday.
Is this your youngest brother that's in Bloomfield?
Oh, every holiday.
Oh, good.
Now they're in Florida. They don't like winter, and for 10 years they lived in Florida in Jupiter, but they moved back. They didn't like hurricanes, and they went through a big.
Yeah.
With Francis was the hurricane.
Yeah.
But anyway, they're both back. One is on the east side. The youngest one is on the east side. But all holidays,
That's nice.
we get
Yes.
together.
And I see that you also, in your lifetime, took time out to care for your mother,
I did.
which was a blessing, I'm
Yes.
sure. Yeah, a challenge and
But
a blessing.
she loved her apartment so much, and there was a tree outside her room that she loved. She just loved waking up to that. I'm going to get
Well, we do our
teary-eyed like I
Yeah,
did
your
when I
mom.
first entered. But anyway,
Okay. What's
it-
the memory you're thinking of as you think of your dear mother?
just my mother.
I know.
Yeah.
You're very close.
And she had taken care of my father. My father died 2 years before my mother. And, but anyway, so she was able to stay at home and not be hospitalized. So that was nice.
Gift. Do you have, I mean, as you speak of your parents and your family, is there a certain quote or saying or that you'd like to leave with us that has helped you get to this point in your life that maybe you learned from your mom or someone along your way?
Well, I love St. Paul's epistle to the Corinthians on love. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I just, and Nadine Foley wrote a song when we were in the novitiate. Mm-hmm. She was a half a crowd behind me. And I want that at my funeral.
Write it down.
I did. It's already in the
good.
archives.
Good.
And they had a search for the piece of music. Uh-huh. And Sister Magdalena tells me, it's terrible music. She said, don't do it. But I want to.
You do what you want, that's right. As someone once said, that's the last time we get to preach, is how we plan our funeral.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that.
So anyway, I just loved it. You know, and it was, I just thought it was just a clever, what do I know about music? Mm-hmm.
It spoke to your heart. It spoke to your heart.
It did.
How do you want to be remembered, Alma Marie?
You know, I don't care.
You don't care?
Well, in a sense, I don't care. It's what the Lord knows.
Beautiful.
That's important to me. Mm-hmm. So I'm not worried about that.
Interesting. Nice comment. That says a lot.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to share with us that I didn't ask or you were hoping I'd ask or that you want us to know about you?
Well, I don't judge people as much as I used to. And I think I got cured when I watched James Lipton on a TV program. He was talking, I think, to college-age students, and he interviewed movie stars or, you know, personalities like that. And I did not have a favorable view of Clint Eastwood or of Billy Joel. Mm-hmm. And he interviewed them. Those men were so profound. I couldn't get over it. Their personal lives were a mess. But, you know, there was so much more to them.
Exactly.
And so that cured me. You know, I now say, I wonder what's deeper than that.
Well, now who was that interviewer? I'll have to
James
get to know.
Lipton.
Lipton.
And
okay.
I would love, if you ever get in touch with the program, there were 10 questions he always asked them that I would love to have those questions. I think they're very interesting.
Well, thank you. I'm going to look that up. And really, that's the purpose of our collecting our history as Adrian Dominicans with a sister story. We don't know each other until we can do something like this.
Yeah.
And dig a little deeper and know a little bit more about Sister Alma Marie and what made her who she is and was, and the importance of our family and our friends and our experiences are tremendous, are holy, are sacred.
Thank you. You are a good interviewer.
Well, I'm going to check James Lipton
Good.
and go deeper. So thank you, Sister Alma Marie, for your willingness. And you bring back happy memories. When we had that committee on aging in Chicago.
Oh, absolutely.
You had so much energy.
In Burbank.
Yeah, you had your energy level just fed my soul. That was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.